Okay, welcome everybody. This is the Fair Housing Commission of Somerville meeting of Thursday, June 5th, 2025. This is a special meeting. Um, and I'd like to call the meeting to order. I hear Commissioner Rona in the background saying she agrees with calling the meeting to order. How about Commissioner Janine? Yes.
I'm
Hello, Janine.
sorry, I forgot. I thought I unmuted. Yes, I agree.
Okay, and Commissioner Patrice.
Yes.
So the meeting is called to order, and given that and we are expecting Commissioner Kay in a couple of minutes, but given this is a special meeting, we're very grateful to the Metropolitan Area Planning Commission, MAPC, for accepting our proposal to work with us on expanding our reach and our connections in the community to make our work more effective. And so I'd like to turn the meeting over for now to Gloria and Sarai from MAPC.
Great. Thank you so much. Appreciate you all taking the time for an additional meeting here today to have this conversation about how we can work together on the Somerville Fair Housing Commission's engagement work. So I think maybe briefly, Sarai and I can each just introduce ourselves again quickly, since I think Janine, this will be your first time meeting Sarai, and then we can dive into things. But again, my name is Gloria Hongpu. I am a community engagement planner here at MAPC. So really have the opportunity to work across all of our different planning disciplines, thinking about how we can improve the engagement work that we do and really center our community members' voices in our planning and policy work. Sarai, I'll turn it over to you to introduce yourself quickly as well.
Gloria. Hi, everyone. I'm Sarai Zalata. I am a public health planner at MAPC. So my work is really focused on improving health and wellness in communities, and been doing a lot of work with the landscape analysis process with Gloria. So happy to be here with you all.
Welcome.
Thanks, Sarai. Great. And yeah, like I said, we'll just take a couple of minutes to quickly recap what the landscape analysis is, sort of recap the purpose of the conversation today, but we'll spend most of the rest of our hour in our Miro digital whiteboard tool, where we'll actually have you all as the commissioners, and Shannon, of course, as well, really do most of the talking and sort of think through this landscape analysis concept together. But again, as an introduction, a landscape analysis is really a tool that we use to identify the different potential partners, opponents, but also sort of more broadly community resources for whatever project that we're working on. We typically start with a landscape analysis to really just help us get a sense of what the different players and resources in a community are. And it's something that starts with a conversation like this, where we talk with the folks that we're working with directly to understand their perspective of their community landscape. But then we'll also follow up with a series of conversations with other individuals that we identify in the landscape through this conversation, to sort of get their perspectives, their input on what that landscape looks like. And putting all of those perspectives together helps us really identify what are the sort of relationships that already exist, what relationships might we want to grow and build on, and what resources might support the work that we want to do together as this project with the Fair Housing Commission. Hopefully it also can sort of provide a baseline that you all can continue to come back to and maybe update what relationships there are, or sort of think about how you want to build relationships in different areas of the landscape as we move along, just recognizing that the commission's capacity is limited. So while we might eventually want to have relationships with folks from all across the landscape, we're going to want to start in one place and sort of build from there. So part of the goal of today's activity is also to help us prioritize where you want to start, where you have capacity to start, and what might some medium or long-term engagement relationships be. I'll pause there briefly if there are any questions about the overarching purpose of a landscape analysis or what we'll be doing together today. Okay, hearing none. I wonder if we actually just skip ahead to our takeaways slide from our data poll. Sorry, I don't have the specific slide number off the top of my head, but looks like Shannon should be able to get us there. And we can just do a quick overview of the data takeaways. I believe you all have the slides if you do want to reference them as we go through our conversation. But just to give a quick recap before we dive into the interactive exercise piece. First step when we do a landscape analysis is always for us to look at what data we already have available to help us get a sense of the community that we're working in. And so usually we end up looking at census data, American Community Survey data, looking at the demographics of a community as the starting point. With this project, we also took a look at your housing discrimination complaints data that the city has collected over the years, and looking at the last 4 years or so, what we really saw was that housing discrimination complaints were primarily coming from folks who were claiming discrimination based on 3 protected classes. The most frequent complaint being around source of income, as well as disability and race being other very frequently cited reasons for perceived housing discrimination. And then also just wanted to highlight that looking at the last few years, wards 1 and 6 were geographically where we were seeing most of those complaints coming from. Big caveat to all of this data being that it's obviously limited to who has actually reported to the city, to Shannon and staffers. So recognize that there's probably more that's not been reported. And then that's really why we're also wanting to look at our demographic data that we do have available to give us more of a sense of the community more broadly, help us make some inferences on who might not be reporting that we should also consider. So first of all, just recognizing in terms of that protected class of race, that even though we have 70% of Somerville residents identifying as white, also high percentages of folks identifying as Hispanic or Latino, Asian, and Black or African American. So keeping that in mind as we think about race as one of the most commonly cited reasons for housing discrimination. And the first part of our activity we'll jump to in a minute, we'll sort of think through how we want to narrow in that protected class of race as we think more specifically about who is the community we want to engage. This is sort of bolstered by our data on naturalized US citizens, non-citizens. Also just want to highlight that almost 60% of households in Somerville are non-family households. So really that tells us that there's a lot of that college student population that we want to be considering. But at the same time, 42% of family households that exist do have kids. So another reason that we know is common for housing discrimination or fair housing. And then the last one that I also want to highlight here is we have 8.5% of Somerville residents who live with disabilities. Again, that was one of the top cited reasons for housing discrimination. Most commonly, those disabilities are cognitive difficulties, but also ambulatory and independent living difficulties were the next 2 most common types of disabilities, and those might be more relevant for us to think about as it comes to fair housing. So I'm going to pause there, just ran through a bunch of numbers and data, but wanted to sort of give you a couple of sparks and reminders to keep in mind as we move into the discussion part of the conversation. And with this, maybe we can just go through the next couple of slides here to give you all a sense of what we're going to talk about.
Can I stop you for a minute?
Hold on a second.
Yes,
Yeah.
of course.
I'm uncomfortable with the bullet point that starts with 58%. Because I don't
Okay.
think that they're college students. They're young adults
Young
between
professionals.
25 and 34.
Okay. Yep.
So I would suggest that that conjecture be removed.
Mhm.
Because when
Okay.
I think of who's renting in Somerville, I don't think undergraduates. I think people like Patrice.
Yeah. And
You know,
that's
we've been
definitely,
landlords for 29 years and we've had
yeah.
like 2 undergraduates.
Mm-hmm.
We've
Yeah,
had
and I think that's
graduates, we've had
supported
young
by the
professionals.
age bullet.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So we're not really as much of a student town as Boston is.
Mhm.
So
Okay,
I don't want to start with that kind of conjecture because we have a slightly different character.
Yeah, and part of the goal of this conversation really is to have you all help me
Okay.
make sense, like for us to all make
Okay.
sense of this data together. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Janine, I
thank
see you have your hand up.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I just had a quick question because when I was looking at the summaries and the slides, there's like a star that says that there were 19 complaints related to discrimination, disability, making it the most frequent. We're seeking out data to understand the number of SHA, BHA, and other housing vouchers circulating in Somerville. Who hold those vouchers? This information will help us better understand. But then, how did you know that the most one of the most frequent complaints was about source of income? I was curious how you figured that out.
That's coming from the complaints that we like that the commission receives.
Okay,
So the ones that they submit.
Yeah, I think I got confused. Cool.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, that's referring back to slide 8 and 9 in the slides.
Yep. Okay.
Any other questions about the data that we've looked at so far? Okay, great. Well, again, the idea is really just to have this prompt our conversation and our thinking, but what we'll be doing with the rest of our time is moving into our Miro dashboard to think about these questions. So just to give an overview of what's coming up. We're going to start by talking about who comprises the community that we're hoping to engage in this work and getting more specific about, again, what we mean by community. So if you go to the next slide, Shannon, the first part of our conversation will be looking at each of our protected classes, thinking about the data that we just talked through and thinking through how we can narrow in a little bit further on each of these. Obviously, something like race or color as a protected class makes sense, but we're going to want to narrow in on like which which racial communities do we want to be engaging. Once we have that more targeted set of understanding of who our community is, we're going to take those priority groups that we identify through this part of the conversation, and then in the next part of the conversation on the next slide, we're going to start thinking about how do we reach those residents from those protected classes and those priority groups. And so this will be part 2 of our landscape analysis exercise where we start to brainstorm what community organizations are already maybe convening folks from each of these different protected classes, what institutions might there exist, what outreach channels or communications channels are they already engaged in and looking at. And with this part of the conversation, we are also going to think about some proxies for reaching protected classes. Like, we know low credit score is obviously something that folks use as a proxy for housing discrimination. We might also want to think about unhoused individuals, small landlords as well. Maybe there are others, and we can talk about that. And then last but not least, in the third part of our conversation, that's where we'll start to think about prioritizing, again, recognizing that ultimately you may want to reach all of these different folks that will populate this board with, but recognizing that time is limited, we'll want to start somewhere, and we'll talk about where we want to start. So that's the plan for the rest of our conversation today. Any questions about that before we move into the Miro board? Okay. In that case, Shannon, do you mind switching over to the Miro? And then I think Sarai should be able to take notes. And okay, good to meet you. Thanks for joining. And
Thanks for having me.
yeah, not sure when you're able to join. So if there's anything that you'd like a recap on, please let me know.
I joined around 3:10. I don't think I missed too much.
Okay, great. Sounds good.
Sorry, one sec. I'm making sure it's big enough for everyone to see.
No worries. Take your time.
Actually, I think Leah Robbins from your team is here. I'm at the AIA conference. I think
Oh.
she's here.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, MAPC folks are everywhere. Well, you'll have to tell Leia that we say hi.
I will.
All right. All right. Thanks, Shannon, for pulling this up. So again, just to start, as I mentioned, we're going to think about these protected classes under fair housing law and just start to think through, based on the data, the demographic data we saw, whether and how we can sort of narrow in here. And maybe we can just sort of go through across the blocks that we have laid out here, and starting with race and color, think about, again, how we might narrow these in. So just get my screen a little bit bigger as well. So again, Sarai will take notes for us in the Miro, and we can really just open it up for discussion among the group. As a reminder, with our demographic data around race and color, the largest portion of the population in Somerville is white, but I think based on conversations we've had so far, we're really interested in focusing our engagement here on probably the Hispanic or Latino, Asian, and Black or African American populations. Does that sound right? Any like nuance to that folks would add?
I guess in terms of language access, like maybe 3. Well, Somerville has like the top, I think, 6 languages that are most commonly spoken in Somerville. So, but especially it's Spanish and Portuguese, and then I think after that is Haitian Creole. So maybe focusing on language access in addition to race. I know that might also fall under national origin, but
yeah. I'm sure we'll have things that span across multiple categories, so that's totally fine. But I like that way of thinking about it. What about the disability category? Is that something that folks have encountered at all, or like had conversations with residents in Somerville about how disability has come up?
There's a number of things that, and this is, disability spans a lifetime. So there's a lot of problems in the community in terms of education and special ed. And then there's mobility impairment problems. And then there's people who get discriminated against because they have a support dog. So there's a lot there. So it's a sort of a question of which direction we want to look at all those things. So I don't know if other people have ideas, but I feel like it touches everything. All the road changes are affecting people with physical disabilities. as well as cognitive disabilities, because driving is changing. There's stuff in the schools, there's stuff in employment, there's stuff in housing, and we're involved with housing. So
Yeah, like, are you hearing
not-
from folks that like having a support animal is a big complaint, or
Yes.
is it more the ambulatory difficulties with like going up and down stairs? Does
People
any
who-
of those
yeah.
pop out most?
Yeah, they do pop up. And the thing is, people who can't go up and down the stairs generally don't ask for help because they get condescended to. So it's a problem.
So we're maybe not hearing reports.
We're
from
not
those
hearing it, and
folks.
we're a very vertical. I mean, everyone who lives in Somerville knows this. We're a very vertical town.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Most two-family houses have 8 to 10 steps up the front,
Yeah.
and then you're on the first floor. So it's a real, so there's mobility issues with housing. So we should stick with housing.
Yes.
Support animals, mobility, and then people who are having cognitive mental health problems are also the people who have economic problems
Mhm.
because they get marginalized in other arenas, and then it affects their ability to have housing. So it's a little bit of all of it in disability. And people who have disabled children sometimes get discriminated against, although we haven't seen that. We haven't seen anyone know to complain about it.
Mm.
But, back in the day when my friends were having children, they were losing apartments because their babies were crying in the night.
Mm.
And babies cry in the night,
Yes, they do.
So, that I guess goes under family status.
Yeah.
But I'll stop.
And again,
Let's keep going.
definitely crossover.
I think
Ginny,
important.
did you want to add?
Yeah, I was just going to say that, like, under the disability and the support animals, I do recall that one of our, I don't know if it was the Facebook, I think it must have been the Facebook question of the week, that one of the ones that received the most viewings and comments was about that particular issue, which, correct me if I'm wrong, Dennis, but I seem to recall that there was a lot of activity around that particular issue. And so, I honestly don't know any way to really reach those folks, but they saw support animal and on the, when they did a search, and landed with us at some point. So I thought that was worth mentioning.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely something that sounds like that could be a really good way of narrowing in, at least to start, like what we mean when we're talking about disability, or rather discrimination based on disability. If that's like something that's happening most commonly in Somerville, we can certainly start there. I guess in terms of national origin, we sort of already talked a little bit about the language access component. Is there anything else that feels helpful to highlight? If not, maybe we can look at religion. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say we're in a very awkward time right now because national origin is leading to abduction in our community. And my hope is that that's not going to go on for a whole nother 4 years. But so I think that community, the immigrant community, is really in crisis. And I'm not sure what we as a commission can do.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it could. I wonder if, I think it sort of indicates maybe going in one of two directions. There's either, I think, really focusing on trying to support and provide like that educational knowledge sharing of like, this is what discrimination looks like. You still have rights and can report these things, or the other tact of just sort of recognizing that they already have a lot going on and might not be in a place to receive that kind of information at this point. I was sort of thinking, I wonder if it might make sense to talk about this hand in hand with religion, since I know we do have some overlap in our immigrant population with sort of who is attending churches and other religious institutions. So maybe we can think about that as a avenue for trying to help us make that decision.
Yeah, I mean, I would say the religious and this has always been a conflict in Somerville because, you know, although we don't have the stats, we've got a lot of atheists here.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of atheists who are recovering Catholics and recovering Protestants and recovering Jews. And because of that, there's a lot of resentment. But I do believe there's still a lot of organizing happening within the religious communities and creating a bridge for that with people who don't have any use for religious institutions would really help our movement.
I'm going to chime in on that, and I know this is more in the part on mapping resources, players, and connections, but historically, yeah, people in Somerville, governmental and nonprofit organizations that do not happen to be connected to a religious community or to an immigrant community that is organized around a church, you know, forget how central those institutions are. So I just want to underline that and say when, you know, to the extent that we want to reach out to those communities, for instance, I'm not sure of how active it still is, but the Haitian congregation in Somerville was really important at one point. There's a Korean congregation that's very active.
And the connection.
That's what I was going to say.
Connection, right, connection, right, in East
Connections.
Somerville.
Christian.
Everything.
Yeah. So anyway, enough
Maybe
said.
no, I was gonna just suggest maybe we move down to that part 2 section, since I think we know source of income is section 8.
Sure.
And Shannon and I have talked a little bit about the nuances there in terms of SHA vouchers versus BHA vouchers and other sources. We talked about age a little bit earlier in our conversation. So maybe I'll give a final call for thoughts around like narrowing in these protected classes for now. Otherwise, let's maybe move to part 2 and start thinking about who those partners are.
I would say marital status is not a huge issue here. I think we're basically a liberal community, and there's a lot of straight couples who don't change their names, and there's a lot of women living together, whether they're in a couple or not, and people generally mind their own business. And I don't know if I've got rose-colored glasses, but I think it's a minimal problem here.
Yeah. Okay,
Whereas
yeah. So
family status is a little different
Mm-hmm.
because once kids are involved, it gets different.
Totally.
Can I add 2 things? I'm not sure if this is entirely
Please.
relevant for this section, so sorry if it's not, but for marital status, I haven't received any complaints about that. Anecdotally, I have heard some people talk about like their landlords saying things to them that are not right, based on, you know, I guess more sexual orientation, gender identity, that type of thing. I have heard about that, but that's less of, I guess, overt housing discrimination and more something that would fall under what the Department of Racial and Social Justice does. And then the other thing that I was thinking about is, you know, although class is not a protected class, for source of income, disability, and family status, like having kids, a big problem is that landlords will see that someone has a kid and they haven't deletted the unit, or someone has a disability and they need reasonable modifications and they don't have enough money to make the modifications, or they have a voucher and they think that they don't have enough money to make the building up to code for the voucher. So it all kind of intersects on that class line, I think, of who is actually, like, in terms of families, you know, someone who can buy a house might have a little different situation than someone who has to rent and is looking at cheaper units where they might not be deletted.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that intersection between all of these is super important to keep in mind as we go through.
But one other thing that struck me is I wouldn't say like military service. I know it's a protected class. I would say that one thing that struck me about that is that we probably have a lot of homeless veterans. So I don't know that they're always thinking in terms of themselves being protected classes. And I'm sure that they've been discriminated against or are having trouble with housing issues because they are homeless. But if they are also a vet and they're a protected class, maybe there's some, you know, outreach or connection that we could, you know,
Absolutely.
not benefit from, but talk about.
Yeah, for sure.
And that also intersects with disability because a lot of the vets from, particularly from Iraq, came back disabled, and fewer came back dead. And that's, we are not taking good care of them.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think this is a good point, Shannon, if you don't mind moving us down to part 2 of the conversation, to really start thinking about, to that last point that Janine and Rona, you were making, how do we connect with these folks? Where might there be organizations that are already serving veterans, for example, or potentially folks who are unhoused, recognizing we're making an assumption there's probably some overlap there. Where are they already seeking support and resources or getting their information? Same question sort of goes for all of these other protected classes. And I might suggest maybe we start with religion, since I know we were already mentioning connections as one potential partnership to focus on.
Yeah, it's Connexion, like it Connexion. And their pastor is lovely, just a
The
really
adorable,
good,
the adorable
he's just
Jordan.
such a lovely person.
Are there other religious institutions in the city that you all think would be important to touch base with as well?
I think it's worth getting a list of all the ones that there are and going to their websites, because I mean we have a moderately small congregation, but we have a very active social action committee that's been doing stuff through GBIO, and that's all housing. I mean, GBIO has a huge housing push.
And Rona, when you say we, I know you mean Temple B'nai B'rith.
Yes. Yes. Temple B'nai B'rith on Central Street. So that's a thing, is that there's probably a social action committee or a they might call it other things, but we call it the social action committee, that's doing housing work. And I wouldn't be surprised if First Church on College Avenue is doing it,
for sure.
and the Methodists. Not sure what other churches are active. I'm thinking of I did a lot of coalition work with a bunch of ministers that are all gone now, but the communities are mostly still here.
The Catholic Church that in Ward 1, St. Benedict's, I know has been very active. I think still around different social action issues, particularly because their population is largely Latina, and so they focus a lot on immigrant issues and immigrant family issues. So
yeah, that's great. I wonder if this is a good segue into thinking about national origin and maybe race, as some of our other protected classes that came up as having high rates of complaints actually filed to the city, reported to the city. Are there other institutions or sort of gathering places you all know of that are already serving folks based on different race-based communities, immigrant communities?
There's an immigrant, let's see, how's it go?
Immigrant service provider.
Immigrant Services
Alex.
Providers Group, which mostly focuses on health. And I'm not sure how active it is, but that's one place. Patrice, I was interrupting you. Go ahead.
Oh, no worries. So I kind of want to touch on a little bit of the thought that a little bit of the before thought about religious institutions, and then kind of lead into organizations that we know reach kind of like a diverse population in Somerville, kind of get clarification on that. So sometimes I want to say that we may not be able to look at religious institutions, all of the religious institutions in Somerville, because sometimes folks go out of the community to go to their religious institution, especially if a certain church cannot afford to build in Somerville proper, and people like have to travel like to another town or another way to like, you know, worship. So I wonder if it's worth like looking regionally, or maybe looking to see if there is the neighboring towns, like maybe Medford. I'm thinking about who else has a large immigrant population.
Everett.
Everett, definitely. So maybe kind of see if folks from Somerville may be traveling to Everett to go worship. I mean, because sometimes you just can't be local, whether you want to be or not. And also leading into that, there are certain Somerville organizations that are already like that already have a kind of a population that can reach, that do that social work and that kind of outreach to immigrant populations. Like there's some connected to the schools, definitely. I want to say there is, oh my goodness. I want to say, I guess we already talked about maybe Summer Viva, maybe the Peabody House,
Good job. Yeah.
the Mystic,
Welcome
oh
Project.
my goodness. Yeah.
Well, yeah.
So there's already like a long list of like Somerville organizations that kind of like reach out to the population, to the immigrant population, and maybe also to other populations too. Somerville's very good about that. So I wonder if we can like have them listed. I wonder if there's a way that we can have like a list just go down the I wonder if there is a list. There has to be a list, right? That is a great.
By
To
faith,
come up
I
with
would
here.
think, you
The
know.
last time I saw a list, it was in the late 90s.
Well, maybe this
So
can be an opportunity
it
to
needs to
create an
happen again.
updated list.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I
And
think all of those organizations you just mentioned, Patrice, they're exactly what we want to be surfacing here. And hopefully then talking to them, to your point, can also help to identify more organizations, resources, communication channels. Like I know in some cities and towns, different immigrant populations will have like a WhatsApp group that's where they get all of their information about city resources and things like that. So anything like that that you all know of or have heard inklings of that we should like pull, threads that we should pull
I
on.
think we should add GVIO to this because they're also well connected, and
Yeah.
we might be able to crib their list. I'm sure they're not going to be proprietary about it.
Great. And Kay, just seeing your message here, I don't know if did she already hop off?
I don't know.
Looks like she
I
already
think
hopped
so.
off. Okay. Well, hopefully she's able to take a closer look. Oh, future of DEI in architecture. All right. So maybe we can turn towards some of these other protected classes that we have on the table as well. Thinking about source of income, another of the highly cited reasons for discrimination. Any sense from the commission sort of around where folks who might be experiencing discrimination for bringing a Section 8 voucher or an SHA voucher might be already getting support, might be gathering, might be getting their information, things like that.
Well, that's all the housing nonprofits. We've got a lot of them. We've got CAS, we've got SCC, we've got offices like Janine's working on in housing. There's, I mean, there's a number of those spots around town. Janine, you probably have that resource.
Yeah, I think you named the two that we work with the most are CAS and SEC, particularly CAS. Sometimes the Homeless Coalition also will pop in there. But on the source of income one, what I have found is just even like if there's a I don't know. I think it probably still exists, but the SPOA, the small property owners, not my favorite group. However, you know, in terms of educating small landlords about the fact that it's actually, you know, pretty cool to have a Section 8 tenant because your money is guaranteed, you know, your rent is guaranteed to a certain extent, but they don't look at it that way. I know,
No.
but you know, it would be, I don't know even how to begin to educate people, but you know, I think money talks sometimes, and you know, I don't know, just
I've done a lot with SPOA. And I don't think they're
not going to do it, huh?
It's sort of like talking DEI with the Republicans.
Got it. Okay. I wasn't sure because I don't know a lot about them other than
I know more about them than I want to.
Is educating, I know educating landlords is sort of part of the scope of what the commission is seeking to do. I guess I'm curious how you all would balance that in terms of prioritizing your engagement efforts. Is it really like that's a longer term hope and goal, or do we want to be like actively educating folks on both the tenant side and the landlord side?
So I wanted to mention the landscape has changed in the time that I've been working here because of the creation of the Office of Housing Stability.
right.
You know, it did not used to exist. Now it does. It's well staffed and well funded. And we have the beginnings of a good working relationship with them. Gloria, you probably ran into some of those folks at the April month event, and you know we've worked together. And when it comes to reaching out to landlords, I think at this point they have a better.
You might be right there, Dennis.
Yep, that makes sense. Yeah.
So is that there somewhere? The Office of OHS?
That should probably be in the where CAS and SEC is.
Yep.
Yep. Just keeping an eye on the time,
And
recognizing we have about.
landlords, yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, please finish your thought.
No, please go ahead.
I was just going to say, keeping an eye on time, recognizing we have about 5 minutes left. Wondering if, as you take a look at the range of protected classes here, if there are any other organizations that come to mind in the city that you think might be related to like helping folks find housing, or where folks might be going if they think they've experienced housing discrimination based on any of the different protected classes. Anything that comes to mind?
It may be a little outside the box, but I wonder if the PTOs are worth talking to about the issues of having kids in town.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Absolutely.
And on the other end of the spectrum, how about the elder service agencies and senior housing?
So there's a commission on disability. And is there a commission on elder services, or is that just a department?
I think it's just a department, but they have a board. The Council on Aging has a board that,
Okay.
serves kind of like a commission, I guess.
Okay. So the Council on Aging board would be on the age, and the PTOs would be in the family
Family
status.
status, yeah.
Well, and I was also thinking, in addition to the Council on Aging, I was thinking about the places where are like specifically for senior housing. Rona, like where our friend Carol P lives.
Ah, okay. Yeah, that's true. The people who live in the senior housing
Yep.
have a unique experience.
Are those SHA
Some
buildings?
of them are, but not all.
Some of them are.
Okay. Got it. Great. Any other final thoughts on different organizations, gathering places where folks might be spending a lot of time? Also, another prompt I hadn't mentioned was thinking about Ward 1 and Ward 6, where we saw the highest number of complaints. I think I may have cut someone off if you want to jump back in.
Well, I just had the sense we're in June. So if we ever want to really address sexual orientation and gender identity, I mean, there's a million parties going on in June that we could possibly be tabling at. And they've probably been the most fun tabling experiences of our, of our year.
Talk about housing discrimination and pride
Yeah,
all at the
why
same
not?
time.
Why not? Everybody needs a roof over their heads.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, this is, of course, not the end of the conversation and the brainstorm here. If things come to mind after we wrap up for today, definitely feel free to shoot me a message, shoot Shannon a message, or I did drop the link to this mural in the chat if you want to add anything in there directly. But in our last 2 minutes here, would love to just really quickly think through prioritizing this list that we've started to come up with. I think we can just stay on the screen actually instead of moving down to the part 3 screen. But I will say, I know I have heard you all talk a lot about the religious institutions, and it sounds like that might be a really great place to start because it sort of will help us reach folks based on who might be experiencing discrimination based on race, based on national origin, based on that sort of income level, class component that Shannon mentioned earlier as well. But maybe we can go around the room and have the commissioners and Shannon sort of shout out if we had to really prioritize and start with one relationship that you wanted to build, that you wanted to connect with, to get their thoughts on what the landscape is, and how we can further fair housing education in the city. What would be the one organization you would want to connect with? And maybe we can just go around the room and answer that question in our last minute.
You should call
Anyone
on people
want to kick us off?
different orders.
Okay. Great.
Patrice.
On my screen, oh, Dennis, you want to go ahead and call on people?
I'll facilitate this part. Patrice.
Thank you.
So I would say I can't pick one, but let me just move the screen closer because I'm on my phone. So I would say national origin immigrant service providers. I want to say that's a one that we want to definitely be in touch with. Also, OHS definitely, and CAS and SCC and the Homeless Coalition. I think that's where we're gonna find like a lot of folks that we want to reach. Let's see. And definitely elder services. I lied. I really meant them all. So those are my top.
Thank you.
Everything's top priority.
If it's okay, Janine, can you go next?
Sure. I think that it's kind of a new thing for us, but I think the PTOs could be a really interesting place to reach families in the schools. So I think that would be great.
Shannon, your thoughts?
I haven't spoken a lot with them, but I think that Cass would be a really good connection for us to have like a stronger connection with. Obviously OHS and probably Somerville Homeless Coalition too. I also feel like hopefully some of these organizations can give us some other connections to focus specifically on race, because we don't really have anything there that's specific to race. So I feel like that just shows probably more a lack of knowledge on our part and not a lack of spaces.
Thank you. Rona.
I have a fantasy that there should be an annual or semi-annual meeting of of somebody from each commission, because we've got a human rights commission, we've got a commission for people with disabilities, we've got a women's commission, we've got a fair housing commission, and there's a lot of intersection that isn't happening because we're siloed. So that's something that I'd like to see happen. And even if it's like 2 meetings a year, I think a lot of stuff will happen at those. Just like when Patrice and I Patrice and then I sat on the anti-displacement task force.
And I'll call on myself briefly. I agree with that. All of these are worthwhile ideas in terms of priority. I would make the religious organizations number one, mostly because it's kind of a new field for us to plow. And I think we'd get connections from it that we wouldn't get any other way. And then I would go to the both the nonprofits and the other city agencies that deal with housing, and then probably elder services third. Those would be my priorities.
Great. Well, recognizing we're over time already, but if folks are able to stay on for another 30 seconds, I can wrap us up with just a bit of an overview of what the next steps are. So thank you all again for sharing your thoughts, perspectives, knowledge in this session. What Sarai and I are now going to do is take everything that we talked about today in this conversation and start to analyze it and think about doing some additional research to see what other organizations there might be, and then starting to prioritize the list of potential connections so we can identify which of these we're going to have those follow-on one-on-one conversations to build their perspectives into this landscape map. I think we have a pretty good prioritized list already based on the last couple of minutes of our conversation. But what we'll do is get sort of an outreach plan ready to have conversations with each of those organizations. We'll be able to do about 7 to 10 is what we have scoped for the project. And I would love to have commissioners, Shannon, join those conversations if you're able. We do have sort of a conversation guide that we developed and that we used for these conversations. Really, Sarai took the lead in developing. And so we'll share the link to that conversation guide so that the commissioners can take a look and add any input, any additional questions you want to make sure that we cover in those conversations with the different organizations. But the goal is to be able to bring their perspectives into this, surface any other organizations that we might not be aware of in this group, and then get their input on how we can best engage folks that they might be already connected with around fair housing so that we can develop an engagement plan for the rest of the summer and going forward. So I think that's the plan. Any questions about that before we wrap up about what's next? Okay,
No,
well,
but is there anything we can be doing to support you? And getting back to you
yeah.
on any assignments for us?
Yes, so we'll be sending out the sort of interview guide, the conversation guide that we'll be using for those chats with the other organizations. And so you all reviewing that and taking a look would be a great help, great next step.
Gloria, I think also just starting to think about if you might know or have any connections to these organizations.
Yeah, specific contacts. That's a good point. Thanks, Sarai.
Definitely. So thank you, everybody. I need a minute just for formalities here. I forgot to say at the beginning of the meeting that pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2025, this meeting was conducted via remote participation. That means we have an audio recording available upon request as soon as possible after the meeting. And this was a special meeting. Our next regular meeting is scheduled for 3 p.m. on June 26th, 2025. And our able staff person, Shannon, will provide minutes and an agenda in advance of that meeting. And I just want to say to the public that everybody is invited. And of course, MAPC and our collaboration with you folks are going to be a standing item on the regular agenda. If there's a meeting where you don't need the time, that's fine, but we are reserving it for you.
Sounds great. Yeah,
All right.
I'm excited to continue the conversation.
Any final questions, comments? Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I'll move.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, making it unanimous. We are adjourned at 4:07 p.m.
Okay, thanks so much.